Hey there, and welcome to a special video where I'll be doing a beta review on Ayato. He's not out yet, and he's almost about to be showed to the public in the live stream coming right about now this Friday. But I wanted to just talk about Ayato because I've seen a lot of threads and questions either in the Ayato main subreddit or the leak subreddit. And there has been like a lot of questions about how to farm for Ayato, what team comes to use for Ayato, and I decided, hey, let's make a video explaining everything that there is for Ayato, because a lot of people still to this day, where a lot of stuff has been theoretically calculated, a lot of people are still confused and they just can't exactly follow the leaks and discussions, because those that do leaks and discussions on those subreddits, well, we are kind of more like into the mathematics stuff and more meta stuff that some more casual people may not fully understand and again follow with terms or something that people use around those subreddits. So nevertheless, this will end up kind of like a review that I do with the normal Genshin characters, but because this is, Ayato is still in the beta and his kit has not been fully finalized, we may see some changes, who knows, when he hits the live servers. We have to take stuff in theory, because in the beta client you also cannot fully test team comps and such. It's weird how the beta client works. You cannot test how a team comp works, or test even Ayato's skills and how useful they are. You cannot do that. So because of that, everything is theoretical. So I decided to throw my own theories at Ayato, and yeah, and this is gonna be it. So I'll try to chapter out the video into the main sections that I've got planned. And yeah, the video is going to be very big because, well, we haven't had a character like Ayato being so versatile, I'm gonna be honest. Previous characters like Shenhe and Ito, they were very clear on what teams and what roles they were meant to fulfill. Ito was going to be a Geo main DPS based on def like Noel, and Shenhe is a cryo damage buffer for Ayaka and Ganyu, basically, because they are the main cryo DPSs. So it was very clear to say, yeah, these are the teams for these characters. But Ayato and his kit, he seems to be pretty versatile. There are definitely going to be some distinct go-to teams for the best DPS depending on what you want to do with Ayato, but it still seems that he has a lot of versatility under his belt. So let's go right into it, because there's a lot. Let's start off with like some of my views on his kit and such, opinions. Auto attacks look nice and beautiful, although I do not like exactly how his charged attack is just Ayaka's last attack on her normal attack chain. It feels kind of a, cheap copy, although, well, you're not gonna be seeing his attacks a lot because of his skill. And yeah, I mean, auto attacks look fine. The skill is fine, it's cool, it's unique. A lot of discussion and craziness went on when people discovered that his clone that he makes does not taunt. They removed it. It used to taunt, and then people were like, "Oh my god, a huge nerf!" And it's like, not exactly. To be honest, whether or not he has or doesn't have the taunt, it's exactly the same. It's always a 50-50. When he had the taunt, half the time the opponents would destroy it immediately because you used the skill while an attack was going on and the clone was destroyed, and half the other time the enemies took a bit of time to destroy it. Or maybe the enemies just didn't get taunted at all because they never got into radius, or the duration expired until they got into the radius. And now without the taunt, well, half of the time an enemy is going to be in range immediately and the clone will just explode. Other times the enemy might not be fully in range, and after a few seconds the enemy will be in range and the clone will explode. Or other times the enemy might just not come close to the clone at all. Maybe they did an attack that made them go off to a completely other direction and, they missed the range. Again, as you can see, taunt or not, nothing changes. So yeah, no nerfs, it was definitely not a nerf when it was discovered that there was no taunt on the clone anymore. So yeah, don't go around spreading like misinformation on, oh my god, he lost his taunt like 2 or 3 weeks ago and it's like useless or such a nerf, and it's like, no, relax. As I mentioned, does not matter if he has the taunt or not. The situations are literally the same. And yeah, I mean, the skill, they pushed Ayato in the beginning with a kid with a bit of HP scaling. He used to have the HP to burst damage talent, and now that HP scaling on the skill pretty low on multipliers. And I understand they do not want to make Ayato a Hu Tao, but I think they could raise them a bit in order to make it seem more useful instead of a pretty useless thing. You know, the multipliers are just that low, alongside with Ayato's not so crazy base HP base stats. It doesn't come off at such a useful stat to have on the skill, but they wanted to have the gimmick of the Namisen stacks that increase time to time with the attacks, and like, yeah, I understand, but they need to tweak a few things for sure. And as for the ult, it's a Ganyu copycat. It's like literally Ganyu's ultimate, like to the T Ganyu's ultimate. So I can understand why they wanted to copy it, because most of the focus was placed on the skill being nice and unique. They said, hey, let's do something similar with the ultimate, so, you know, slap in Ganyu's ultimate. And the thing is that with like Hydro and with the characters that we have in Genshin Impact, we have basically reached the limit on, let's say, creativity that you can do with water. Because Xingqiu has water taking a shape with the rain swords. Barbara has a rain sort of ultimate. Child also has the rain taking a shape with his weapons, but, you know, he has the slice with the melee ultimate and the rain arrow, like the water arrow with his ranged ultimate. And then you're like, what exactly do you do with water again? And they're like, let's do Ganyu's ultimate and make it rain, basically. You know, it was icicles before, now it's raindrops, and it makes thematic sense. That's good. Although, if I'm honest, I would have made it a wave. You know, like a tsunami kind of wave. I like thinking of like Diluc and his Phoenix traveling in a line, in a wide line. Exactly that. Like, it would have been a copy again, but it would have been more unique. Like, we don't have a wave ultimate or wave skill in the game, so hey, put a fucking huge wave behind Ayato that travels just like Diluc's ultimate and then slams down because it's a wave. I think that would have been a nice thematic thing, and maybe would have fitted a bit better into Ayato's playstyle. Because now with the ultimate being like an 18 seconds ultimate off the field, well, that adds versatility into some of the teams, but perhaps with the wave being a one and done thing just like Diluc, it would have focused Ayato more on the main DPS path that they sure like to push him at. I think that's what they're trying to do, of course. But yeah, like, the ultimate is fine. It's a copy of Ganyu, but acceptable. The skill is fine and unique. The ultimate can be something we've seen before and nothing hurts. And as for the talents, like the first Ascension talent, which is when the clone explodes and when you use your skill you gain some Namisen stacks. Because of the power level again of these stacks with the HP scaling, because it's that low, maybe they should have changed it when they took out the second Ascension talent, which was the HP to burst damage thing. Yeah, like, it's not that powerful. It fits finely as an Ascension talent, but maybe they could have done something else. And then for the second Ascension talent, right, they changed it to the energy off the field. So when Ayato is below 40 energy, he regenerates like 2 energy every second. It's fine, but we are definitely going to go into the live servers and test out a lot of team comps to see how rotations affect this talent. Its usability will definitely need to come from how much energy it actually regenerates, because of that 40 limit. Well, once Ayato reaches 40 energy one way or another, that thing will stop. The effects of the talent will stop. So again, we're gonna have to see how well that does. Maybe it's completely useless because because rotations call out for Ayato using his burst while before he uses his E, and the particles that he generates from his Z just fill out his burst close to 40 energy, and that's about it. Then the talent is pretty much useless. Maybe rotations are just that fast that the talent doesn't generate a lot of energy. Or rotations in some teams are a bit slower, and Ayato does get some good use out of this talent. We need a lot and a lot of testing to see how good this is, and I as well cannot really tell you my opinions on this talent. It's an interesting concept, but maybe it fits another character. You know, like I would have thought of someone like Raiden having that, having such a talent. But you know, since they do not want any Inazuman character to have low burst costs, damn you, Mihoyo, and your stupidity. Well, this indirect burst cost reduction will have to be tested. That's it for the kit, really. Constellations, they're all fine. C1, I think like Diluc has a very similar one. C2 has like an insane HP increase when you have enough Namisen stacks. And we'll have to see how powerful that is. Is it like a go-to constellation like Hu-Tao C1, Raiden C2? Not so much, I think. I don't think that it will increase his DPS that much. Before, with the HP to burst damage, maybe it would have been pretty powerful. But now it might not end up that good. We'll have to see, but I don't think it's going to be like the Hu-Tao C1 versus Homa debacle. It's going to be, if you're going for C1, might as well go for C2 because it's a very big damage increase, but don't go from C0 to C2 or weapon, like that kind of thing. And the only thing, like his C6, come on now. They could have easily made it much more different and much more powerful. Like, it's C6 we're talking about. Nobody cares about balance when you reach that power level. They could have easily made the clones attack like throughout his skill duration instead of once at the start. Come on, that would have been, first of all, cool because you have 3 Ayato, no, well, like 4 Ayatos. So hey, and it would have been a lot of damage. And again, C6 power like it would have easily been something like Xiao's power level and such. It would have been very, very cool. So I do not understand why it's only once per skill. So yeah, those are my opinions on this kit. You know, once he's out and I get my hands on and I test him and I do the review, we're gonna talk more about the kit. But let's move on to stuff you care about. Let's start off with like materials you can farm and artifacts. For character ascension, you're going to be farming the Hydro Hypostasis, and you're gonna be gathering Sakura Blooms. I was gonna make a video before the beta predicting these materials, but to be fair, it was extremely easy to predict these materials. The Hydro Hypostasis was only being used by Kokomi, and it's Hydro. And then the Sakura Blooms were only being used by Ayaka, and it's Ayaka and Ayato. Their siblings. Makes a lot of sense for them to be using the same stuff. For talents, you're gonna be getting the Elegance books, the same ones that Ayaka uses again, the ones with the fan, available every Tuesday and Friday, and Sunday, of course. And then, if you are dead set on getting the weapon, you're gonna be farming the Narukami weapon materials. Those are like the kind of like tier thingy or like half yin-yang thingy. Yeah, those are the ones that you're gonna be farming. But for the other materials, you cannot farm them right now. You cannot pre-farm them. They are the shadowy husk drops, and they have not been added to the overworld yet. They will be in the next, in the new area, the chasm first area. They're gonna have a spawn there, but there are some speculation, like they're supposedly also gonna be put on to some Inazuma Islands and Kanomiya, and I think in the island where the Spiral Abyss entrance is. So you will be able to farm them day one and get the weapon on high levels, but you might need to explore the chasm pretty quick, or, you know, invade other people's worlds, or of course wait a few days to gather all of the materials needed to get the weapon to level 90. Also, I mean, if you're gonna go for the weapon, unless you're very lucky, which I hope you are, you can also waste some Stardust or Star Glitter if you have some left on the materials in the shop. They most likely are definitely gonna add them into the shop, so you can get them from there if you want to get, help yourself get some materials without running around and searching for their spots, their spawn spots. So yeah, of course you're gonna also need the Kairagi handguards. So go and erase the whole samurai population, because you're gonna need a lot of those. For boss materials for his talents, you're going to need Raiden and the puppet hands. And of course having dream solvents helps a lot, because you're not gonna farm all of the hands unless you're super lucky. You're not gonna have enough hands to level up his talents to the max or wherever you want to go with that. But the good thing is, if you're not full on gonna level up all of his artifacts, his auto attacks can be left on level 6, because his auto attack numbers do not transfer to his skill, because his skill has different scaling numbers. So you can easily leave his auto attacks on level 6 and focus all of the boss materials on the burst and the skill. You're gonna mostly be focusing on leveling up the skill, but because the burst gives a normal attack damage bonus also to Ayato before it was attack speed, and it did not include Ayato, you should level that up because it actually scales up. So yeah, like equal talent levels on the skill and the burst, with the skill having a bit of more priority. I mean, depending on the team comps you're running, which we're gonna mention later. But yeah, if you don't have dream solvents, go and farm all of the bosses on Monday and Tuesday. That's what I do. 3 bosses with 90 resin, get the 60 from the teapot for one more boss, and then 120 on Tuesdays for the other 2 remaining bosses, just to get as much dream solvent as possible in order to transform them into hands. If you rolled for Yaemiko, who also uses the materials, good luck. I hope you didn't convert those hands into Yaemiko materials. For artifacts, there are three main contesters for the best in slot artifacts. There's Heart of Depth, Gladiator, and Echoes, which is a new set coming on with the new patch. All of these 3 are extremely similar in damage. There are some cases when it comes to team comps and weapons, and I'm gonna mention them when they need to come up, but literally all of these 3 are comparable with a few percentages in difference, and just choose the better substats. That's the main thing you should focus on. Whichever set has the better substats, or whichever set is compatible, like if you have a Gladiator goblet, maybe that is more fitting than, maybe your circlet isn't that good on your Heart of Depth artifacts, but you have slot in Gladiator and then pick a off-piece circlet. Like those normal things, basic instructions, like basic advice that would be on every character. So, and this happens with Ayato. Heart of Depth, Gladiator, Echoes, any of these 3 with the better substats works. And because of you cannot farm Echoes, you should be farming Heart of Depth. Farm Heart of Depth, you're also gonna be farming Blizzard Strayer, and then, if you don't get any good Heart of Depth artifacts, you can then, or Blizzard Strayer, you can then transform them into Gladiator if you go to the alchemy table and transform them into Gladiator, and see which ones you get better off. And even if you are dead set on farming Echoes and putting Echoes on Ayato, farm Heart of Depth, farm Gladiator, transform them into Gladiator so that you can at least have a powerful Ayato to explore the chasm, do your daily commissions, maybe go on the Abyss. For sure, of course, the next Abyss is going to be Ayato oriented, although it seems like it's more Venti oriented, but Ayato is definitely going to be a strong pick for the next Abyss. So having a strong Ayato on the Abyss before you get yourself your Echoes artifacts will be something that you might want to have. So farm Heart of Depth, go with Gladiator, or else, even if you're gonna go with Echoes, do the daily mission. Like, maybe the domain for Echoes is going to be good to be cleared with Ayato, so you're gonna, have an easier time if you have Ayato. And, get that friendship XP. Get that sweet name card. To some that matters, and again, it's just general advice, because Heart of Depth and Gladiator are so close to Echoes. even with any team composition and any weapon from theoretical calculations that have been made, well, they end up so similar that they're gonna be very useful. You're gonna be very close to your echoes artifacts once you farm them up. Like, please, this is just basic logic. Have a built Ayato if you need him at any point before you farm echoes. So, that's about it when it comes to artifacts. Again, there are exceptions, and when those exceptions need to be said, I'll mention them, and yeah, you can work around those exceptions, but seriously, just farm Heart of Depth, transform them into Gladiator if you don't get any good Heart of Depth or Blizzard Strayer, and then if you want, farm Echoes. I do not like the design of Echoes. Like, first of all, the 2P set is an 18% attack. They could have easily made a normal attack damage bonus. Like, come on. Or attack speed. Like, do something freaking unique. We don't need 5 artifact sets that have 18% attack, for fuck's sake. And then the effect is RNG. Even if people, of course, tell you because of mathematics, oh, it triggers 50% of the time, I don't care. By design, it is bad. That's my problem. That by design, it is a bad thing to have this much freaking RNG into a game. Into this artifact set. No. Just no. For your substats on your artifacts, main stat actually, Sans is attack. Previously, with the HP to burst damage, there was an argument to be made on using an HP Sans, especially with a weapon like Jade Cutter. But with the removal of the HP to burst damage, unfortunately, running an HP Sans isn't good. Before, I could make the argument that if your other artifacts also had a bit of HP percent, then you can use HP as a main stat, but not anymore, unfortunately. Attack Sans is the way to go for the main stat. Goblet is of course hydro damage, and then Circlet is crit rate and crit damage depending on what you're missing. And then we get onto the substats. Crit values, crit damage, crit rate are of course the main thing, that's given. For the second priority, I would say that energy recharge and attack kind of share the same spot, the second spot of priority. Attack is attack, and you're going to need a lot of it because Ayato does have kind of a low base attack, so reaching that sweet spot of around 1900 to 2000 attack is going to be, kind of hard. You're gonna need a lot of attack, seriously. My Miss Splitter build with some good attack rolls on artifacts still doesn't reach 2000. And I've got Miss Splitter, the best base attack. So yeah, but there is also a bit of an energy requirement. I think around 140 is the base for Ayato, so do go on a bit of a hunt for those energy recharge substats, no joke. But energy recharge or attack, they are pretty similar in priority. And then there's HP, because there is that tiniest bit of HP scaling, but it definitely falls quite down. If you have Jade Cutter, it is kind of less useless, but it's still better to run with to focus on attack and energy recharge on your substats. Let's get into a next section, which is team compositions. I'm gonna leave weapons last. Team compositions. There are a lot of theoretical team comps that have been thrown around, and well, again, without any good testing on the live servers, you can't exactly say which is a good one or which is not a good one. For me, I have two main categories for Ayato teams that people are gonna be running. The main DPS Ayato teams, where Ayato, everything is focused on Ayato dealing normal attack damage through his skill, and the burst is very much secondary, or it's there to just give you the normal attack damage bonus that it gives. The damage doesn't matter. And the second main category is the balanced DPS Ayato, where people will be using it for his burst because it's cool and it's pretty and they will be slotting a bit of power into making sure that the burst deals a lot of damage, while also maybe having Ayato on the field to deal damage through his skill. These kind of teams are separated between character picks, of course, the team compositions, and weapons. So yeah, I think these are the two teams that people are gonna be running. For the first category, actually, I think there are two subcategories. the main DPS Ayato, like there's one subcategory which is the main DPS, where Ayato is all of your team's DPS. Everything is focused on him dealing the max amount of normal attack damage, and that's it. And then the second subcategory is like what I call the slightly shared DPS composition, where maybe people don't have all of the pieces to use Ayato as the main DPS, or they just want to have another character in their Ayato team that can act as a DPS character. But let's take them one by one, and I'll explain to you how they work. The first subcategory, which is the main DPS Ayato. These are very simple. The main character that helps Ayato is Yunjin, of course. Yunjin, which came with the Shenhe and Xiao, the Shenhe banner and the Xiao rerun. She's the perfect thing for normal attack damage characters like Yoimiya and Ayato, so she is kind of inseparable in these kind of team comps, mostly. The main thing is that because Yunjin adds a flat amount of damage to normal attacks, it's actually better to not run Ayato with an Echoes of an Offering and run him with Heart of Depth or Gladiator. And yeah, because Echoes will also add a flat amount to your normal attacks, and Yunjin also adding flat amounts of damage, it's not a good thing to make a combo of. So it's better running Heart of Depth and Gladiator that are percentage based, and then running Yunjin, which is, has flat damage bonuses. If you're not gonna be running Yunjin, then you can run Echoes. But for these teams, like, it's Yunjin, the main one, then someone like Venti or Kazuha. In this case, I would say that Kazuha kind of like goes higher in like power compared to Venti, but both of them have pros and cons, of course. Kazuha has good damage amp through his elemental damage bonuses, while Venti has good crowd control, and he also has self-battering talents. He regenerates energy through his burst to himself, and also he regenerates energy to the absorbed element on his ultimate, so that can help battery Ayato if you want to have the normal attack damage bonus, very on good uptime, because Ayato's burst actually has a 100% uptime. It has 18 seconds duration and a 20 seconds cooldown, but until like the animation finishes, it's on 18 seconds already. So you have this 100% uptime, and maybe you can achieve a fully 100% uptime with Venti compared to Kazuha, because again of that battering that Venti does. And maybe, if you pulled on the Homa banners, you have an elegy for the end. That's a very good support weapon for Ayato because of the attack, and of course Venti is a good carrier of elegy for the end. It's best in slot in a way. But maybe you have better, you don't have good bows and you have an Iron Sting, so you go with Kazuha. Like, again, they both have their pros and cons, but the main thing is that you need an ammo unit because of freaking Viridescent Verener. Like, that's the main point. Having Viridescent Verener, a carrier. John can work. I would say John if C2, because at C2 she has the attack speed buff, and that's kind of nice to have. But she does cover the the healer part of a team composition, but she doesn't offer anything else except for being a very decent carrier. Very decent and heals, but compared to Venti and his crowd control and battering, and Kazuha and his elemental damage buffs, she falls very much behind. Sucrose, unfortunately, because elemental mastery in these teams doesn't matter, because what matters is Ayato dealing hydro damage. There's no vaporize, there's no electrocharge, there's nothing. Sucrose falls very much behind. Thrilling Tales is nice, but just bringing in Sucrose for Thrilling Tales and Viridescent doesn't fit that well, compared to bringing in John, I would even say, for the attack speed buffs and the healing. So yeah, like, John fits on the very budget one if you lost your 50/50s, or you got it from the standard banner, but the main guys and ammo guys is Venti and Kazuha. Then for your fourth slot, there's a bit of a flex in that slot. You can fit in Bennett for, of course, the healing and attack buffs, especially if you bring Kazuha and Venti and Gyunjin. There's no shields, there's no healing, so you're gonna need a healer. So bringing in Bennett is a good option, although there is an argument to be made to bringing in Bennett. because Bennett, with his low cooldowns, well, he applies pyro like crazy because he just taps his E everywhere, and because Yunjin cannot, Yunjin won't like clear pyro that well because Bennett again is using his skill so much. It might actually be harder to swirl Hydro because of Bennett's pyro application. So that's an argument to be made. We're gonna have to see how rotations work and how to use Bennett in this team comp in order to safely swirl Hydro, because pyro also takes priority. So yeah, because of that, maybe Venti becomes better than Kazuha, because Venti battering Ayato will mean that Ayato has his burst, and the burst will clear off the pyro from Bennett. So maybe, we're gonna have to see and test. But, this is the argument that I make against Bennett when it comes to using him with an Ayato team comp, and then Yunjin and a Venti unit and a Nemo unit. Swirling Hydro might be harder because of Bennett's pyro application. For the safe one, an alternative to Bennett is Zhongli. If you bring in Zhongli, you have the Geo Resonance giving you that 15% damage amplification, and then you have Zhongli. You have a resistance shredding through his shield, and you have a shield, right? You have Zhongli's shield, which is very, very powerful, and Zhongli and Yunjin do not apply any sort of elements, so the only way to not swirl Hydro is if enemies have some sort of self-appliance elements like, like mages, abyss mages, or slimes. So for some people, maybe running Zhongli might be an easier playstyle. We're gonna have to test. We're going to have to test if Bennett really ruins the swirling. We're gonna have to see. Other than that, you can bring in Xingqiu. Xingqiu if he's C2. These team compositions, again, focus on buffing Ayato to the max. Xingqiu will not do that, but unless his C2 offers resistance shredding. It has hydro resistance shredding, and, well, that's mainly it. It's it's worse than having Zhongli because the 15% damage amp from Geo Resonance plus the shredding win against Xingqiu's just shredding from his C2. Right, but not as powerful as Bennett, of course. But Xingqiu carries on the micro healing, and with the Hydro Resonance, because you have Ayato, his healing is nice and powerful. He also brings in a Hydro application, but that doesn't really matter. You have battering because Xingqiu batteries Ayato well, because it's Xingqiu with a sacrificial sword, of course. That's awesome. So you might not need to bring in Venti and bring in Kazuha. Like, all of this is something to consider based on what you have. But again, Xingqiu is fine, good sub DPS, good battering, needs C2 to be really good to fit in an Ayato team for the shreds, but really that's about it. And then, really, there isn't anything else for these main DPS Ayato teams. Who else exactly is gonna buff Ayato? The only thing you're gonna be doing is compromising. You don't bring Bennett and you bring another healer, like, let's say, Diona. The shield is nice, resistance to interruption might become a big thing for Ayato because of his uptime on his skill and not needing to be interrupted at all. So maybe shields like Zhongli, Diona, and Xingqiu's resistances might actually end up better than Bennett's heals that don't offer resistance to interruption. We're gonna have to see. But yeah, like if you bring in someone like Diona or any other healer, you're not buffing Ayato, and you might be ruining swirls. So you're gonna have to be compromising for something. That's mainly the thing. Else, remove Yunjin, run with Echoes, bring any character you want, and then bring that healer or other buffer. Like, there's versatility in these main DPS Ayato teams, but there are definitely some set combinations that people have figured out, and I would agree with them. So yeah, like, as I said, Venti, Bennett, Yunjin, Venti, Kazuha, Bennett, Yunjin, Venti, Kazuha, Zhongli, Yunjin, like, any of these combinations will most likely end up well. If you really want to run double Geo, there really isn't anyone else to help you except for Zhongli. If you bring in Goro to buff Yunjin's def to buff Ayato more, it is a compromise. It is a way it will work, but you're not gonna get very, very great results. And also, if Goro isn't C4, he's not healing, you don't have a healer. So you can bring Goro, but you will not achieve great results. From some calculations that I've done, it actually does come close. If Yunjin is on good levels, so is Goro for the death buffs, and maybe if you're running deathmatch on Yunjin for the extra death, like, they do reach good numbers because of a 15 damage amplification of the georesonance, but it's not a good solution. Like, that's the thing. It is a solution, but it's not recommended. I mean, Goro can help Yunjin's battering, but if you can easily run Yunjin with a Favonius Lance, I mean, if you're not gonna run it with a deathmatch, because that's the only the only spear that gives death. Like, else, the only character that I can think of is Toma and his buffing on his C6. But we're talking about a C6 Toma, and yeah, like, that's extremely hard to get. And yeah, he's gonna be fine. Although, once again, it might be a bit hard with the pyro application, the off-field pyro application, which is gonna be worse than Bennett, right? It's gonna be worse to help not swirl pyro with Toma than Bennett. So, once again, kind of like Goro, C6 Toma can work. He also offers shields, fine enough shields, if you build him well, but it's not going to be a very good solution. We're gonna have to see. Again, these are all theoretical. We cannot fully test them. These are all theoretical. And then let's move on to that other subcategory that I told you, the slightly shared DPS. If you don't have if you don't have one of these units, you maybe not gonna be running with an Anemo unit. You might not have a Yunjin, anything, and you have some other character that might be able to fit in these teams, but you know, they have good DPS capabilities as well. Well, actually, there's like 2 units that do that. I think that there's like 2 units that work well in this slightly shared DPS. And what do I mean with that slightly shared DPS? Well, the main units that I'm thinking of is Raiden, a good highly invested Raiden with like Engulfing Lightning or a Kachar 5 and good artifacts, and a hyper invested Zhongli with like Homa and full-on burst focused artifacts. What I'm thinking is, like, out of like the 3 out of 4 rotations or 4 out of 5 rotations, Ayato is on the field dealing his damage. And then on that one rotation, that 5th or 4th rotation, that other character comes onto the field to deal equal or most likely more damage than Ayato would have. So in like teams like that include Ayato with, once again, an ammo unit, Bennett instead, or Yunjin, and then like Raiden, which is the main thing that I'm thinking of. Raiden, which takes, she takes a lot of time to fully charge up her ultimate, but once that ultimate is fully charged up in that 3rd or 4th rotation that I said, she comes onto the field, deals immense damage with her ultimate, and just leaves for, another 3 or 4 rotations. That's the idea of the slightly shared DPS. Ayato is still the main guy. You still have supports that buff Ayato, but there's another guy in that team that comes around every few rotations to delete the enemies, basically. Like a fully charged Raiden with an R5 catch will decimate enemies compared to Ayato with his skill, I bet you. And Raiden fits very well. Electro Charge doesn't hurt swirling at all. She provides off-field Electro application if you want to swirl Electro when she comes onto the field. And she buffs bursts, so she's gonna buff Ayato's burst a bit, Venti or Kazuha's burst. Bennett will be nicely there to buff both Raiden and Ayato, or Yunjin, which will mostly work on Ayato, but if you don't want to use Bennett or don't have Bennett, then you can run Yunjin instead of there. But, be careful of healers, because Yunjin doesn't heal. Or shields, so you're gonna need to be careful. But Raiden, again, is the main thing that works. And then with Zhongli, this team basically works the same as the Venti, Kazuha, Ayato, Zhongli, and Yunjin, but now you have like Zhongli coming in for some really big bursts. Previously, on the main DPS Ayato, you actually may never use Zhongli's burst because that loses time of Ayato. It's fine to use it if you want to finish off an enemy quickly or lock enemies into place. But the main DPS Ayato needs Ayato to be not necessarily constantly on the field, but it needs to not waste time of the rotations to switch back to Ayato as quickly as possible. That's the main thing. But these slightly shared DPS ones like to use Zhongli's burst because it's that powerful. If you're dropping 150 to 200k bursts with Zhongli, then that's gonna be nice, every now and then. Because, battering Zhongli is not that easy, even with Yunjin. But the main thing here is that you need to bring Yunjin most likely. You need the Geo Shred from the Geo Resonance plus the 50% damage bonus, because that will be the best thing for Zhongli. You can bring Bennett for sure, but you're bringing in Zhongli plus Bennett, that's like overcompensating for something here, like immense healing plus the best shield in the game. Come on now, relax. It's better to bring Yunjin, because in this one, right, Zhongli just does his one-time burst and he's off. So Ayato is very much the main DPS character here, while Raiden would like buffing from someone like Bennett, and of course the Anemo units. So it's better to run Hyunjin again with the Geo to full-on buff Ayato rather than Bennett here. It's still gonna be fine, but again, you're overcompensating with the freaking heals and shields, Jesus Christ. So let's move on to the balanced DPS teams. These are not necessarily off meta or something, but I've seen a lot of people wanting to do some weird combinations, and well, let's check them out. So what is the balanced DPS? As I said, this is focusing on battering Ayato and having his burst always up, basically, because of this high uptime. But also maybe bring him in to deal damage with his skill. These are kind of weird, and yeah, like they're, again, very weird, and there's always some problems to be found in these ones, unfortunately. People want to run Ganyu and Ayato because of their similar ultimates. Well, first of all, you're gonna need Venti, because Venti makes the team work, and then you're gonna need a healer. Most likely, you're gonna either be running Xingqiu or Diona. The thing is that both Ganyu and Ayato in these cases will need batteries, and also the question is, who is dealing damage? Is it Ganyu with her charge attacks, or is it Ayato with his skill? Who does what? With that question, one of these two characters will become a burst bot, basically. You can be like, oh, one of the rotations it's Ganyu, one of the other rotations it's Ayato, which will net you results, but they're not going to be very, very good results. You're most likely gonna, delete the abyss, basically. You're gonna go get through the abyss, but you might find some trouble along the way. Seriously. The idea here is that you either bring Xingqiu to battery Ayato, or you bring Diona to battery Ganyu. And then you have Venti, who is gonna need to swirl the other element in order to battery the other character. You brought Diona for Ganyu, Venti will have to swirl Hydro to battery Ayato. You brought Xingqiu to battery Ayato, Venti will need to swirl Cryo to battery Ganyu. That's how it's gonna need to work. And then, yeah, that's the only thing. Running a Cryo battery or some other Hydro battery like Mona, you don't have a healer. You can run Prototype Amber on Mona, but why? Better to run a Favonius Codex to battery Ayato and Mona herself, I would say. Mona sounds good because of the Omen extension through Freeze, but you don't have a healer. And even Freeze teams need a healer every now and then. You're gonna be facing enemies that cannot be frozen or broke out of freezing, like bosses or any sort of enemy, and you're gonna need a healer. You can be a daredevil and use, of course, learn rotations, be good with skills and such, and run with Mona without any healing, or other cryo character without any healing or shielding. But for the average user and player, I would say that they most likely will like the easiness of running a shielder or a healer. Xingqiu and Diona, they also offer other kinds of buffs if needed, other kinds of things, especially, C2 Xingqiu. Other than that, I mean, the same can be said for Ayaka team compositions. If you want to run the Kamisato siblings, bringing in an event, an Anemo unit like Kazuha or Venti, or John. In this case, it is kind of easy, it isn't that important to bring in Venti or Kazuha, but you're still gonna need 2 freaking batteries to battery both Ayaka and Ayato, because they both have huge energy problems. These are really hard to run teams, really. The other easier one, I would say, for the balanced DPS is Electrocharged. So you bring in Beidou and Fischl, maybe you bring in Raiden and Beidou, Raiden, Fischl, like 2 Electro units, maybe bring in like a Bennett, a healer or other, or again an Anemo unit, and then Ayato. Like these sort of like Electrocharged variations can also work very much finely. Sucrose is a bit more useful here, because Elemental Mastery will boost Electrocharged damage, although these Electrocharged comps mostly care about both Electro and Hydro damage. It's just that Electrocharge is a nice reaction in these team comps. Like you're not gonna be caring a lot about Electrocharge damage when you've got Beidou's ultimate and Fischl's and Oz dealing lots of Electro damage, plus Ayato dealing a lot of Hydro damage. Like that's how these teams will work, instead of focusing on Electrocharge damage solely. Those are these balanced DPS teams. And because you're running 2 Electro units, you can funnel a lot of energy into Ayato, and because of that, that's how Ayato gets lots of burst uptime. Now, these teams, they could perhaps run a 2-piece Noblesse on Ayato if you care a lot about the burst damage. But if Ayato is still going to be a lot on the field, Fischl and Beidou, they're both off-field DPSs, you're still gonna want to run with something like a Heart of Depth or, Gladiator, Echoes, and the such, and the like. Although, I would say the Heart of Depth is better, because Heart of Depth with the Hydro damage bonus will help a bit more with the burst. So yeah, these Electrocharged combinations are the balanced DPS, and the freeze comps that have some sort of other DPS in them, and you're like, who the heck is the burst bot in here? I don't think that running Ayato with an energy weapon and Emblem of Severed Fate is going to be good, because you're going to be losing a lot of DPS. Even if you full on give him lots of energy recharge, it's better to run Heart of Depth with normal artifacts. I think that's going to be a bit better than running Emblem of Severed Fate, especially what the calculations have shown. So, yeah. Anything else? Oh, something to note here, right? I mentioned Venti a lot on these team compositions, right? And he does matter a lot, especially in these balanced DPS teams where you want to maximize Ayato's burst damage. Why is that now? There's a lot of freaking misinformation out there. Wow. There's a lot. And even to this day, where it's been settled on a lot of these freaking subreddits on how Ayato's burst works, I still see the same mistake and misinformation. Let me get this clear. Let me set this clear. Ayato's burst does not have quadratic scaling in any freaking way. Neither does Ganyu, neither does Albedo. They do not have quadratic scaling. They have what's called pseudo-quadratic, but even that doesn't come close to what actual quadratic is. And let me explain that to you, okay? What is quadratic scaling? Well, the only character that has quadratic scaling is Child's Riptide, especially, to be more specific. Let's set an example. If you have 3 enemies, and all 3 of them are affected by Riptide, just hitting one enemy and triggering Riptide will also trigger all of the other Riptides, the other 2 Riptides, and all of these 3 Riptides will deal a total of 9 instances of damage. The first Riptide gets, procs, enemy 1 takes damage, and then the 2 others take damage, right? Then the other Riptides proc, The enemies take, and again, all three enemies take damage with each Riptide proc that happened from one hit, just one hit on one of the enemies. Ayato's burst and Ganyu's burst at that work very much differently. You have the same three enemies, and then one raindrop drops on one of the enemies, and then all of them get hit. But that was one hit. Then the second hit happens, and then again all of the enemies take damage. So in order to get the same effect of quadratic scaling that quadratic scaling did with one hit equals 9 hits, with Ayato and Ganyu you need 3 hits to get the same 9 instances of damage. So it's not freaking quadratic scaling. You get that? It's good. It's a linear scaling where the more enemies there are, the more damage you'll deal, because with one droplet you dealt the damage to all of the enemies, which is just standard AoE. It's just what an AoE attack does. It deals damage to a lot of enemies, goddammit. It's just that because the AoE of the droplets, of the raindrops and the icicles is that small, well, it matters to group them up, and that's why Venti is more useful in these burst-focused teams, because Venti groups them up all in the center. One raindrop deals damage to all of them. If you have 10 enemies, or 6 enemies, and you hit them all, and they all have Riptide, and you hit them with one child attack, your PC is gonna explode because of the quadratic scaling. While with Ganyu and Ayato, it's not gonna explode, okay? That's it. Quadratic scaling, by the way, if you want to think it otherwise, is to the power of 2. That's what it is. It's enemies to the power of 2. The small number that you see above another number, those are powers, right? That is quadratic scaling. You have 6 enemies to the power of 2, that's 36 instances of damage, and that is the truth for child. But with Ayato, it's just 6 enemies, 6 instances of damage, with one raindrop, and then again 6 and 6 and 6. That's how it works. So please, seriously, it makes me go mad seeing people still say that use Venti with Ayato to abuse quadratic scaling. It's not quadratic scaling. Okay, call it pseudo-quadratic, but do not call it quadratic, please. Please. Okay, please. Seriously, please. I thought there was a mega threat on the leak subreddit. There were a lot of people making it clear that Ayato does not have quadratic scaling, and then I see guides posted today or yesterday saying quadratic scaling, and I'm like, holy fuck, do you not know math? No offense to anybody, just please stop using quadratic scaling and stop saying that Ayato has quadratic scaling, or Ganyu. Please stop. Please, it's seriously annoying. It's seriously annoying. So then, that's it for team compositions. There's definitely a lot of others that some people will find out, like Monohydro, and maybe a freeze, like Zinkshu, Mona, Ayato, and someone else, maybe Venti or Kazuha. I mean, those will work. But where exactly do these compositions fit? I mean, mostly on the main DPS Ayato, but they definitely sound worse than the ones that I think I told you about. Let's move on to weapons then. I have a weapons page right here, so if I glance to the side, that is because I'm reading the weapons. So let's go through the weapons. For 3 stars, if you're on super early game, I mean, just fit in anything. I mean, Harbinger of Dawn is really the best one for the stats, but just anything will do, of course, for early game, let's be fair. 4 stars then. The Black Cliff Longsword. It's fine. It's fine. Good base attack. Gives crit damage. And in the teams where Ayato is really the only DPS, like the main DPS teams that I mentioned, you most likely are gonna get a few Black Cliff stacks. But I wouldn't rush to use my Star Glitter for Black Cliff for Ayato. If you have a spare Black Cliff, or if you just really don't care about constellations on characters and you have so many Star Glitter that you don't care, you can run with the Black Cliff Longsword. It's not a bad choice. but there definitely are a few better ones, I would say. It's a good choice. There are just a few better ones. That's what I'm gonna say. Favonius Sword, just don't run it. Even if you're, as I said, I do not, from the calculations, the theoretical calculations that I've seen, running Ayato with Emblem of Severed Fate and then full-on energy recharge just doesn't give you as much damage as just running natural artifacts. So just don't bother with these energy recharge weapons. Iron Sting, low base attack, the Elemental Mastery, you don't care about that. The effect is nice, but too much of a damage loss. Give it to freaking Kazuha, come on now. Lion's Roar. Lion's Roar is not a bad idea. If you run the slightly shared DPS team with Raiden, or of course you're running Electrocharge team compositions, Lion's Roar is a perfect weapon. Especially if you have it on high refinements. It's got fine enough base attack, lots of attack to give you with its substat, and the effect is insane, especially on high refinements. So, Lion's Roar, perfect for Ayato if your team has an Electro character, especially, Raiden, with her off-field Electro application, or again, the Electro-charged compositions. And with even more refinements, this thing just destroys other weapons, actually. So, Lion's Roar, not a bad weapon. And it's good aesthetically, it's good. The Prototype Rancor, it has good base attack, and the effect is nice, but the physical damage bonus just doesn't cut it. I wouldn't use it even with the other good elements on it. I would not craft it for the physical damage bonus. It really ruins the weapon on Ayato. For early game, if you got a Prototype Rancor just randomly, right, without crafting it, then sure, run it. But once you get into Inazuma, especially, you know what I'm talking about. It's, just completely, get rid of Prototype Rancor on Ayato. For early game overworld exploration, it's fine, but not really for anything else. Sacrificial Sword, the same thing with the Favonius one. Lots of energy recharge, but the reset isn't useful, and again, you're not getting lots of damage. Just don't use it. Give the Sacrificial to Xingqiu, damn it. Ali Flash. Ali Flash is fine. It has so much base attack that it does kind of compensate for the elemental mastery that it has on the substat. And the effect with the increased damage when you do not take damage is good, but it's not good enough to catch up on other options. Lion's Roar completely demolishes it. Black Cliff is a much better option than Ali Flash. And yeah, there's a lot of other better options than Ali Flash, even with a very good base attack. I told you in the artifact section, I've got Mist Splitter and I barely reach 2000 attack. So even with Ali Flash's good base attack, you might have troubles reaching that nice sweet spot of 2000 attack for that most DPS is like. The Black Sword is very, very good. I mean, it is definitely what Ayato needs. It does have low base attack, and because of that, I would say that do not run Echoes on the Black Sword. Because of the low base attack, you are not reaching good attack levels where Echoes will give you good results. You're going to need a lot of attack on your substats to reach that 2000. And even then, I do not think so. So because of that, Echoes loses a lot of value. So it's better to run Gladiator or Heart of Depth. Maybe Heart of Depth will be a bit easier because Gladiator gives you 18% attack. And that 18% attack might not be as good as the 15% hydro damage bonus, because once again of the low base attack. But the Black Sword in general is amazing. Crit rate, and then the effect is all about normal and charge attacks. And it does have a bit of healing in it. So running the Black Sword is perfect for Ayato. Would I get the Battle Pass just to give Black Sword on Ayato? Maybe not, I wouldn't say for myself, but maybe you would want to. It's a sword that can be transferred onto basically lots of sword characters. So just having one lying around is, I think, a good idea, until you get a nice 5-star maybe to replace it. The Flute, The flute, unfortunately, while it has the same stats as Lion's Roar, right, the flute will give you the same results in a non-electro composition with Lion's Roar, but, the flute is the flute. It's nice, it's beautiful, I would have to say it's a nice design, but unlike Lion's Roar, which has a nice effect slapped onto it, the flute falls behind. Festering Desire is the same with, the Favonius Sword and the Sacrificial Sword. It gives energy recharge, and also the effect, the skill damage and skill crit rate, they do not transfer onto Ayato's skill, so that doesn't work. Amenoma Kageuchi, there it is. The Inazuma craftable sword, and it is a perfect pick for Ayato. It's very much the baseline for damage calculations for Ayato. Like, for sure. So, yeah, it's Amenoma Kageuchi. Low base attack, so you might not want to run echoes with it, but it does have a lot of attack to compensate compared to the Black Sword only having a low base attack because it has crit rate. So you might be fine running echoes on Amenoma, but it might be hard to reach good attack numbers. Again, that's 2000 sweet spot. But the effect is pretty good until you get your burst back up, because it has such a huge uptime. You're gonna be using your skill once or twice at least. So Amenoma is a good battering option. For those balanced DPS compositions, it is definitely a fantastic sword to run with, and even for main DPS Ayato, it is a very, very good sword. Having more, the energy recharge that Amenoma gives you is good to keep your burst on a good uptime to get that normal attack damage bonus. Don't forget about that normal attack damage bonus. It counts even if Ayato's team is not focused on dealing damage with his burst. And yeah, Cinnabar Spindle, it's not for Ayato. It's an albedo weapon, and you know it. Let's get on to 5 stars then. Aquila Favonia. It does have a good base attack. It does have a good attack percent on its effect, right? It has passive attack increase, and it does have a bit of healing like the Black Sword. But it definitely falls behind the Black Sword because of the physical damage bonus. It's fine. Aesthetically, I wouldn't put it on Ayato, I'm not gonna lie. But it works, I can say. I wouldn't recommend it over the Black Sword, or even over Amenoma, especially an R5, a high refinement Amenoma. But you may want to run it if you got a lucky Aquila Favonia and you're on early game, and you maybe not have the billets. Use it, it's gonna deal a good amount of damage because of that base attack. Skyward Blade, it's not that bad. And I guess now that we've reached Skyward Blade, there is a team composition that people want to run that I think needs mentioning, and I'm definitely sure a lot of you are like, man, what about this team composition that I've seen tested? So Skyward Blade has good base attack, 46, that's nice. It gives energy recharge, so you're gonna have to focus on Ayato's burst a bit. And the effect is, there's a bit of a passive crit rate increase, but the main thing is that when you activate your burst, you get movement speed, attack speed, and you actually gain an Echoes of an Offering type of effect where your normal and charge attacks deal extra damage based on your attack. Although that isn't added on top of the already normal attack damage that you deal, it's an extra instance of damage. But the main thing is that attack speed. Now then, I did mention that that bringing in John to an Ayato team, you should have a John at C2 because of the attack speed. And yes, lots of people, because of how fast Ayato attacks, lots of people want to just completely fill him with attack speed buffs. And here comes the team composition that is very hard to get. It is very high investment, unfortunately. You're going to need a lot of parts that are very expensive to get. So the team composition is Jun, Yunjin, Chongyun, mainly Chongyun really, and Ayato. Jun at C2, which isn't easy to get necessarily. You're gonna have to get her 3 times in the standard banner or lose 50-50s. There's Chongyun. Chongyun is actually fine. You just need Chongyun because of his attack speed buff. But the main thing that Chongyun carries is a Song of the Broken Pines. That's Eula's weapon. And you need that thing at max refinements for the maximum amount of the attack speed buff that it gives. So there's the very expensive investment. Also, you need a Yunjin at C6 for her attack speed buffs. And getting Yunjin at C6 meant you really gave a lot of pulls on Shenhe and Xiao because, well, that's the only banner that Yunjin was on. Hopefully she's on Ayato's banner because he's a really good fit with Ayato. But unless you got Yunjin there or maybe in the standard banner, you don't have Yunjin at C6. And then you need a Skyward Blade. Somehow Skyward Blade doesn't increase attack speed but with refinements, which is interesting. But you need a Skyward Blade and you need an Ayato. And maybe you actually need Ayato at C4 because his C4 gives attack speed bonuses to himself as well. So that's not cheap. So yeah, the full-on attack speed composition is a fun one, and you can get good results from it. Yunjin is there, John with a Viridescent is there. I mean, Chongyun just does Chongyun things, really. But Song of Broken Pines will buff Ayato a lot, actually. So yeah, with all of that attack speed, well, Ayato is gonna attack a lot. A lot. And even one of these attack speed buffs can mean 1 or 2 extra slashes on Ayato's skill. So, yeah, it counts. This attack speed team is good, in theory, but it's very hard to get. That's the thing about Skyward Blade. It's a good weapon. It's fine. Just like Aquila Favonia, if you don't have other options, you can run with Skyward Blade. But Amenoma at high refinements, Black Sword, all of these out-damage the Skyward Blade in a normal main DPS Ayato team. If you're gonna be running the balanced Ayato teams, then, you know, the energy recharge from the Skyward Blade, plus the good base attack, the passive crit rate, and the effect it gives are nice to have in those balanced team compositions. Summit Shaper, if you're running Zhongli, a good shielder, or Toma, you know, again, if you're running a shielder, then Summit Shaper is perfect because it gives a lot of attack, good damage. Summit Shaper is good, you just need a shielder. Jade Cutter, a very good, one of the 3 main contesters for best in slot for Ayato. It's mainly a crit rate stat stick. It has very low base attack, so running Echo is actually bad. You will be reaching good attack numbers, but actually running Heart of Depth and Gladiator might be better compared to Echoes for Jade Cutter, from what I've seen from theoretical calculations. But of course, the main thing about Jade Cutter is that you get 50% free crit rate. It gives 44, and then the 5 that your character has as a base goes to 49, so you reach 50 crit rate just like that. The effect is nice, you know, a bit of extra HP, and then of course the HP to attack conversion, which is nice. Amazing crit rate stat stick. The effect is nice for some extra attack, but the, you know, low base attack might get you away from running Echoes of an Offering. But it's still the top 3 of best weapons for Ayato for sure. A Freedom Sworn, it's a Kazuha weapon, and you know it. It's a support weapon. It's not for Ayato. That's all that needs to be said, really. Mist Splitter, the other one out of the 3, it's amazing. 48 base attack, the highest base attack alongside Aquila Favonia. Plenty of crit damage, not that much, but a good amount of crit damage. And the effect is, of course, awesome. You know, passive 12 elemental damage bonus. You most of the time have 2 out of 3 stacks active. You deal. You have infused normal attacks, which Mist Splitter wants for one of the stacks. You are less than 100% energy if needed, and then you use your burst. Like, Mist Splitter works. The elemental damage bonus is welcomed because Ayato deals elemental damage with his skill, and also the elemental damage, of course, helps his burst deal lots more damage. So Mist Splitter is perfect for every team comp. Balanced, main DPS, anything you want. Mist Splitter is, of course, again, one of the 3 contenders, and you can use any set you want. Gladiator will be awesome because of the base attack, Echoes will be awesome because of the base attack, and Heart of Death will be awesome because of the extra hydro damage bonus, adding on top of Mist Splitter's already, more elemental damage bonus. They all work awesome, no joke. And then there's Ayato's weapon, which is the Haran Geppaku Futsu. It used to be Haran Tsukisuru Futsu, And I'm still gonna be calling it Haran Tsukisuru Futsu because it's kind of a, to me it's a reference to Bleach and Rukia as an attack Tsukishiro. So I like having that reference, even if they changed it. I still call it Haran Tsukisuru Futsu because I like that reference. It's a tailor-made weapon for Ayato. It fits on main DPS teams. Haran will not really be the very good weapon for those balanced DPS teams that I talked to you about. So pick Haran if you're gonna be running with the main DPS teams. And seriously, all three artifact sets work. Echoes, I would guess, is the best one for Haran, but again, every single one with the better substats works. So, and that's it for weapons. That is it for weapons. And I think that is it for the video. So yeah, if you had any questions on how to build Ayato, hope I helped you out a bit. Because yeah, he's very, very versatile, and that is of course awesome. Even if you are not going to be running one of the meta team compositions, there's lots of others that you can just slap Ayato in, and he'll do his job. There's plenty of weapons to use, most of the weapons, and of course especially Amenoma, work very well on him, and you've got 3 artifact sets, two of which you can farm easily, one which you can craft, and of course, go to the bosses, go to the Hydro Hypothesis, you're gonna get a few artifacts there, and they all work. Just choose the better substat, and then, if the weapon has low base attack, as I said, maybe you don't want to use echoes. If you're running Yunjin, you might not want to run echoes because 2 flat damage bonuses aren't as good as one that is percentage based and 1 flat. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Hey, leave a comment talking about Ayato. Discussion is of course open in the comments. Talk about your own plans on how you want to use Ayato with your team comps, what weapons you've got, how your farming is going on. Hope you liked the video, like, subscribe, and the stuff, because it helps a lot. And I'll see you in another video. Goodbye.